Welcome to my show, simply entitled Women Influencers, where you will find inspirational stories of successful women in male-dominated industries. I am Veronica Malolos, CCIM, founder and CEO of the Capstack Group of Companies, providing commercial real estate development, brokerage, and property management services in the greater Orlando area. Today's guest is Laura G. Patac, who grew up in communist Romania but experienced its transition to capitalism that enabled her to evolve from her mathematics, poetry, and storytelling background to becoming a transformational figure in motivational leadership. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe below. I welcome your comments and please share with someone who can benefit from this podcast.
Hello, Laura. How are you today? All the way from Abu Dhabi.
So, Veronica, good morning to you.
Yes.
Very happy to be here. And I'm looking forward to our conversations, which I believe is going to be a delight for your listeners and for your viewers. And I hope that we are going to bring some value to the women and men listening to us, but specifically successful women.
Absolutely. And so I want to just dive right in and ask you about your story, Laura, how you grew up in your environment. I know you're all over the world, but tell us about how you grew up in your environment and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I'm Romanian. As I like to introduce myself, I'm a mathematician who turned poetry writer and a former corporate executive, which in the span of the last 12 months turned entrepreneur. So I grew up in Romania in a very normal family. And I think that my first realization in life came when I was 16, when as an introverted child, shy, being present but invisible, not being able to express my emotions and my feelings, going also through a very rough patch in my life, losing my grandmother and my father left. Actually, I realized that journaling becomes an instrument which enabled me to take my feelings, my emotions, and encrypt them from the thoughts on paper into metaphor. And my mom and my friends, realizing that I'm writing poetry, they started to read what I'm writing. And that was an amazing connection where actually they really started, everyone understood what I'm feeling and how I communicate. My mom encouraged me to continue write, and she also took my writing to someone who can advise me, like a coach, like a writing coach. And by the age of 19, I was continuously writing. I even published in a local newspaper for the high school students. So I realized at 16 that creativity actually is my superpower. And this unique thing of changing journaling into poetry and metaphor, it was something extremely unique.
Absolutely unique. Well, let me ask you one question before you go on. Are you an only child or you had siblings?
I'm an only child to my family. Now that you mentioned that, and growing up in Romania, and Romania was under communism until 1989. I think in that time we were very much focused on education, and as a single child to my family, I was always somehow pushed to be the best in anything I was doing. So I was best in mathematics, best in physics, and I don't regret anything, because that kind of mindset, that the logic of mathematics, and actually poetry is mathematics at the end of the day. The resilience which I started to build from that time, it helped me during my whole life.
Yeah.
So growing up, I graduated from mathematics, and somewhere around the age of, in my late 20s, I started my corporate career.
As a mathematician or?
No, so it was the revolution. Revolution happened in Romania. So we moved from the communism to capitalism. We started to embrace democracy. And our life changed very fast. So the foreign investments got into the countries, all the multinational companies. So it was very trendy at that time to really start working for one of the big corporate America. So
Wow,
my
what a time to be growing up and coming into adulthood for you, because you went from having a communist sort of environment to a capitalist environment. Wow, that's pretty amazing. I love these types of stories, Laura. So please go on.
embracing the new environment with all the excitement that finally we were able to travel, finally we were having everything in our shop, so we were not craving for bananas or oranges, they were available for everyone. But that also came with a lot of responsibility, especially in the space of building towards not only towards democracy in the country, but also trying to find a path which was unknown for
Hmm.
us. Maybe in the Western countries, kids they were being raised and educated in a certain way. That path was very foreign to us. So therefore, it was like reinventing yourself in a very different environment. So I decided to join corporate America because I said this is something which definitely maybe one day is going to help me go abroad and experience the world. And actually that really happened.
Yeah, amazing.
But when entering corporate America, a very different mindset. I think that the biggest challenge which I faced was the challenge to get used with speaking up,
Mm.
with having a coming with an opinion at the table, bringing value at the table, because we were not taught like this in our previous environment. And also English language was not my main language, right? It's like we were learning English in school, but we were also trying to watch different movies uh, in English. I was watching movies with subtitles, English subtitles, and that was, I think, my main way of really learning English language.
Yeah, well,
And
that's really interesting because my daughter, who is American born, and I'm not. I grew up in the Philippines, but my daughter, she watches Filipino movies with subtitles, and she's learned to at least understand the language. She can't speak it, but that's really amazing how it's the same all over the world. I love that.
yes, so I'll be very honest here. I didn't get any lessons. So reading newspapers in English, watching movies with English subtitles, and even now I'm watching movies with English subtitles. It's that kind of behavior helped me improve my English language, and at one moment it helped me get out of my shell of shyness, being shy, and start bringing value at the table. And
Mm.
there is one realization I had, I think, in my second job. My first job was in FMCG, Johnson and Johnson, and my second job was in mobile communication, in the moment when mobile communication was ramping up everywhere. And I realized that the interactions in the working space, actually there it's all about storytelling.
Yeah.
The way how you do a presentation, the metaphors, the data, the research, the way how you present everything, it's storytelling. You really need to have a red line. The feedback which you are giving to colleagues is storytelling.
Yeah.
And when I started to combine my creativity, which went into problem solving and it went into innovation, with storytelling, this is where actually I started to connect, I started to inspire, I started to influence people, and my career path just ramped up.
Mm.
My corporate life over 25 years brought me to 7 countries, 5 continents. I've been to Manila. I love Manila.
Yeah.
I've been to Manila many times. And all my experiences actually they got this kind of rich input of cultures, diversity, new perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think that I embedded that reinventing the way how I write and reinventing the way how my stories in poetry they started to come up.
Mm.
Long story short, 5 years ago, I was based out of Barbados. During COVID, some people say, "Oh, you've been so lucky." Of course,
Yeah.
uh, but I've met there a lady named Patricia, and in this kind of women's power group, it was like a women group on the island. We were meeting every 3 weeks, and we were talking about what we love doing. We were also contributing to the community there, and she asked me to read some of my poems. I think that she was a former BBC presenter, so
Mm.
definitely very British, very British. And so after she took a couple of days to read my poems, she wrote me back a very long email and encouraging me to seriously start thinking of publishing.
Wow.
And that was the moment when I took that challenge upon me and I said, you know what? I'm gonna publish this. From the first draft of my manuscripts to the way how the book got out, my first book got out, it's another long story. But what I realized in the process, I realized that as much as I was like using my creativity, my storytelling in my corporate environment, I was longing and I was missing to do what I love. And what I love is writing and, bringing value to people in a different way.
Sure.
1 year ago, um, I just decided to step out from corporate life.
Mm.
Um, my um, my first initial book and whatever I was thinking that my book will be was almost ready. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to do this because I think that my stories, they have value. I think that they can change life. And I do believe that I have, even if I'm coming from a country somewhere, in the Eastern Europe, I do believe that I can contribute to the world with some wisdom coming from my experiences. So I took that challenge. I found the courage. And this year in March, my first book just got out. And the second one is planned for October 6th this year.
Wow, 2 books in 1 year. That's amazing. Well, Laura, since we're talking a lot about challenges, I wanted to kind of segue into my question about a challenge that you overcame. Now, you spoke about the difficulty of being an introvert and converting yourself into an expressive sort of person. How did you manage to overcome that challenge?
I think that when I started to look into becoming entrepreneur, and I understood that being an entrepreneur comes with a very different way of being exposing yourself.
Hmm.
You really need to be on social media. Until May last year, I never been on social media. I was having a LinkedIn account with barely 500 subscribers. I never shooted a video. On the other side, I enjoyed being a speaker and speaking to my teams, speaking in large environments. I enjoy doing that, but in a very nice, controlled environment. So that's the fear of exposure and really, really going by yourself vulnerable in front of millions of people. And I was seeing, oh my God, if I'm gonna post something, everyone is going to see, everyone is going to judge me. It was that kind of fear. I realized that I cannot conquer this fear by myself.
Mm.
So therefore, joining mastermind being Graziosi, Tony Robbins, and trying to find a blueprint how to launch my business, and they offer a good platform for doing that. I found a colleague of mine, Victoria, and we realized that we both have the same fear.
Mm.
The fear of going out there, the fear to even shoot a video and post it on Facebook. So therefore, we got together in a 30 minutes call, and we took in that 30 minutes the decision that together we are going to launch a podcast. The podcast is called Versus Harmony in Contrast, when we are going to talk about courage versus fear, perfection versus imperfection, bringing up all these opposite things, but which in fact they complement each other.
Mm.
And we did it.
Wow.
Our first podcast aired June last year, and you don't want to know. It's far from being what we are calling perfection, but we also trained ourselves and we changed the mindset, saying that perfection actually stays against progress. So let's do it imperfect, but at least we do some progress and we get some learnings.
I would just totally agree with you in that. When I started my podcast, oh my goodness, it was like painful because putting yourself out there is not easy. I mean, it's you're always thinking that you're going to be judged, or oh my God, it's terrible, and sometimes we're the worst judge of ourselves. Well,
Exactly.
that being said, you and was it Victoria, your friend?
Victoria, yeah.
Yeah, you and
Victoria.
Victoria launched that podcast, and I can imagine that you've touched so many people. So let's talk a little bit about influence. And if there was one outcome that you're most proud of, what would that be?
Definitely the entrepreneurship, which started last year. I have some very ambitious goals there. And so my goal as entrepreneur is that in the span of 12 months, I really want to reach 100,000 people, because if 100,000 people they benefit from the things I'm putting out there on social media, the books I'm launching, I'm very excited that so many people they get some value from what I'm doing.
Mm.
And I think when it comes to influence, in my corporate life, I influenced people through the through the leadership style, and I think that somehow I was having a purposeful leadership because I was always very thoughtful. Sometimes I was tough, and there is one compliment, and I'm just gonna say this story very very shortly. So when I left corporation, 80 people they wrote an electronic, I would say, farewell document where each and every of them they were telling a story about a moment when actually I contributed positively to their life.
Mm.
And there is one comment standing up, and it says like this: with Laura, you either love her or you hate her, but you'll never forget her.
Oh, I love that. I love that. As a
And
matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I saw that you posted something on LinkedIn where you said something about being remembered.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because as a leader, you really need to move from that position of power, which is like you are powerful, you have a title, to move to presence, and your presence to be memorable,
Mm.
to be remembered. So the question which each leader should ask themselves is that how I would like to be remembered, how people will talk after I will not be there, what I'm leaving behind, what is that um, long-lasting impact which goes beyond revenue results, blah blah, growth.
Right.
It's about the impact which you leave on the people.
And if you could sort of encapsulate that, as a piece of advice, how would that shape up to be?
I would say very simple. Thinking small doesn't make you smaller, like it just makes you limited.
Mm.
So, what I would advise everyone is to think big, have that kind of North Star aspiration. And when you have that, and that is linked with your purpose, your values, and you totally believe in that, you're going to find the resources and you're going to become resourceful to really make all the actions to get there.
Absolutely agree with you. I love that piece of advice. As a matter of fact, in I took a few programs with the Wharton Business School, and one of the things that really resonated with me was what they called backcasting. Instead of forecasting, you're backcasting.
Forecasting, yes.
Yeah, you're backcasting. In other words, you envision what the end goal is and you work towards it backwards. So I love that.
Exactly.
I totally love that, Laura. So we've come to the part of our interview where you get to ask me a question.
Well, I was listening to some of your podcasts and they're absolutely amazing. So I was trying to put myself in your shoes because you have so many amazing guests. So how do you intake all these conversations, all the experiences, the stories which your guests are telling you? How do you process all that?
Sure. And thank you for the question. It is true. I mean, I've interviewed close to 70 fantastic, fabulous women like you. And when I think about all of the takeaways that I have from every one of the episodes, I think that the one thing that I've discovered and that really just that I've absorbed is that all of us women, and I'm sure men, although our challenges are unique, all of us have gone through the same thing in just different ways and different aspects, in different countries, in different situations, and we've all overcome. And so every time I walk away from a particular episode, I really do take one takeaway from everyone and I internalize. And really, at the end of the day, my hope is that the listeners would be able to take one golden nugget from a few of the episodes and then be able to apply it to their lives. And for instance, today, I love that you said that thinking small really doesn't make you small, it just makes you limited. I mean, I will remember that and perhaps give that as a piece of advice to somebody else if I run into somebody else. And really, at the end of the day, I'm so blessed because I'm able to absorb all of this wonderful information and advice and stories. Like you said, it's about storytelling, right? The stories of all of these women that actually make me more whole and therefore be even more contributory to my community and to those that I touch wherever I go, whether in my business or my personal life. So thank you for that question. I love that question. Well, Laura, tell us if some of our listeners are want to connect with you or buy your book. And if you could like show your book, that's pretty awesome. I love the cover of your book. Tell us how we can connect with you.
I'll be very happy to connect with your listeners via LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my main platform. Also, my book, my first book, Stories with Purpose, which is meant to really help people understand the power of storytelling, but most importantly, to understand the power of their own story and the stories that they tell themselves here.
Yeah.
And the book is available on Amazon in both print on demand, but also Kindle edition. It's specific in US is available with BookBaby, my publisher, and in the UK because I believe that you have listeners all over the world.
Yes, we do.
In UK with Candiger Books, which is my second publisher, and what I will encourage your listeners is to really reflect on the power of their own story. And reading this book is not like you are not reading this book. You have to experience it because it contains 28 of my personal stories encrypted in poetry, but also having the story behind which inspired that poem, and with two mind-bending questions which makes you reflect on maybe similar moments, similar experiences, what you learn, and how that learning makes your story unique.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. Talk about being vulnerable and talk about storytelling. I mean, this was fantastic. I love it, Laura. I love it. So, again, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know it's like 10 past 10 o'clock in the evening over where you are. And I hope one day you come visit the United States in Florida and we get to have coffee or something like that. I would absolutely be thrilled. I would be thrilled to do that with you, Laura. So thank you. And I bid you farewell and hope we run into each other very, very soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you, your listeners and your viewers. I hope that we were able to bring some joy and some, mind-bending questions.
I love
and
it.
Definitely, when in the US, I love Florida. I come pretty often to the US. I will take you up on the offer to have a coffee together. Thank you so
I love
much.
it. Thank you. Thank you.